Welcome to AI and Automation in Action, where we show business leaders how to turn AI from a buzzword into measurable operational leverage. This podcast is for CEOs, COOs, and technology decision makers who are tired of manual processes, disconnected systems, and underperforming teams, and want to deploy AI and automation in a way that is scalable, secure, and compliant. In every episode, we dissect real client implementations, the architecture, the tools, the integration strategy, and the governance controls, so you can see exactly what works in the real world. If you're serious about operational efficiency and responsible AI adoption, you're in the right place.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. We are excited to be launching a new YouTube channel and podcast service, mainly targeted at helping clients and prospective clients understand how they can better leverage AI and automation technologies. We've gotten several folks that have come to us and said, hey, we're interested in leveraging these technologies. We're just not sure what the appropriate use cases are. And so that's the purpose. We're going to start highlighting some specific use cases and automations that we have built and step through what the challenges were, what the solution was, and what the ultimate outcome was. So today I've got our automation engineer, Hunter Holderfield, with us. Hunter, thanks for jumping on and sharing all the knowledge that you are going to share with us today. I wanted to step through this first automation that we're going to highlight, and it speaks to folks definitely in the IT side of the house. So if IT directors that may have this similar challenge, but more specifically, it could also speak to business leaders that have compliance issues. So whether that's HIPAA, whether that's PCI, whether that's SOC 2, specifically the one we're going to be talking about today is CMMC. So Hunter, if you will, kind of walk us through what the client was looking for and what the challenges around that were that led up to the automation discussion.
Yep. Thanks for passing it over to me. The customer, they reached out to us. They were needing to disable Active Directory users after they became stale at a certain day range. For example, 90 days, a list of users got generated, and that was the list of users that fed this automation that were then disabled in Active Directory. And moving forward, this helped them hit CMMC compliance. It was something they were facing issues with and something they've been trying to move forward with for years now. And this automation ultimately is what helped them reach CMMC compliance.
So let's step back just a little bit. CMMC compliance. For those that are not familiar, CMMC is a compliance requirement for organizations that do federal Department of Defense work under contract. CMMC is a new regulation that has been put in place that states how organizations that participate in federal contracts have to secure their environments and, more importantly, the unclassified data that they have inside the technology environment. So part of that is making sure that all users, all computers that are not active anymore are removed from access permissions. So is that not something that could have done just natively inside of Active Directory?
Certainly can, if you have someone that you're paying annually dedicated for that task. So this was a perfect process for automation because it freed up that primary point of contact from having to go in each day or each week to hit that compliance, finding those users, and then disabling them manually. Having this automated, generating that list and disabling them automatically, freeing this user up to go and do better things for their organization.
So that makes sense. One of the challenges when it comes to any compliance regulation is you have to show what your policy is. You can say that is your policy, but to maintain compliance, it's not just a point in time reference, which is what the policy is. You actually have the controls that you have to enforce that show here's how we do it consistently, and here's how we document that, and here's how we make sure that nothing gets missed. So it sounds like with this particular client, the challenge was, yes, I can go clean that up today, but I need to make sure that tomorrow it's also cleaned up. And the next day, as you mentioned, eliminating the errors that are inherent to that I was sick that day or we're on vacation. And so making sure that it's consistent and correct, are primary drivers for this as well. Not just, hey, I need to save time, but making sure that there's nothing that is missed and it's on a scheduled basis, correct?
Exactly. And not only that, but to follow up on once this automation is complete, it's then giving that primary point of contact visibility by it delivering a notification and letting that contact know what users were disabled so they can go and spot check their other records that they may have missed so they can make sure everything is fully aligned and cleaned up.
So it's doing the work itself, but also going a step further by providing the documentation that's also required by that compliance regulation as well.
Correct.
So makes sense, and I understand the need and why they had to have this in place. In terms of implementation, walk me through what we were able to develop to handle this, how it works, and what it looks like going forward.
Yep. So we leveraged a API platform that integrated with where their devices are remotely accessed. And this API platform is used to generate a list of users that are stale, that hit that 90-day target. And that is working by integrating with where those devices are stored, but primarily with that Active Directory server. So it's getting all of the users. Again, it's generating that list. And then from there, there's a PowerShell script that lives in that platform. And that PowerShell script has some parameters, and the parameters are the users. So whatever stale users are found are the parameters that are fed into that script, and that script then is ran similarly on that Active Directory server to disable the users.
Got you. So I want to ask a clarifying question. When you mention an API platform, what do you mean by API?
API is a platform or a tool or even an application that supports access through a backend process, if you would. So think of if you're setting up a user in Active Directory, you're going into Active Directory and you're clicking new user and you are going through all of the required fields to set up a new user. That's something we call a robotic process automation or an RPA automation. That's the alternate automation path. API, going back to your question, is that backend. So you wouldn't see it, but it's something that is required to be supported by that tool. Where the devices are stored in that tool that we're leveraging, it does support API access. So that's how we were able to make all that happen in the back end. Again, that's not something you would see because it's all ran and completed on the automation platform.
Got it. So it's basically a hook, if you will, into existing software, whereas you mentioned a robotic process automation is mimicking going in and clicking on things like a user would do. This happens behind the scenes where it's really not clicking or doing things that you would notice. It's talking directly to the software at a lower level, correct?
Exactly. And with an API access, really the only thing you're going to see is the final outcome or that delivery notification. Whereas with the robotic process automation, if you have access to where that bot lives, you're able to see all of that happening in real time. And
Got
those are
you.
the main differences.
Okay. So within this API automation, is it limited to just talking to one system or can it talk to multiple systems?
No limits around how many systems it can talk to as long as that system does support API access. That's the main driver in that. And then again, if it doesn't, then we would be looking at that alternate automation path.
Awesome. So key requirements are the software that you're wanting to have integrated with this has to have an API access and has to have the appropriate functions available in the API. What does that look like for the organization now that you've built this? What is it? What are the benefits that they're seeing from it?
Yep. So moving forward, they don't have to ever reach out to their point of contact or have any separations or flow through. Yeah, they will still submit separations so those can be completed and making sure it can be done correctly in all of the tools. But now they don't have to fear if there's a missed user on their network that may lead to a security event later down the road. That has helped them reach that CMMC compliance. and has streamlined their processes moving forward.
Got it. So it's handling a couple of different aspects. It's increasing the security in their environment, which obviously is, from a compliance perspective, is the ultimate goal anyway. But in terms of documenting that, making sure that it's done on a consistent and ongoing basis, it's providing all of that in a more reliable, and to your point, no manual work has to be done around this. It is just running in the background all the time.
Exactly. And that's something that we reviewed with that customer on how often that needs to run following their CMMC compliance needs.
Do you have any idea, obviously there, when we look at automation and AI usage, we want to look at, does it save time? Does it increase efficiency? Does it increase accuracy? In terms of time saving, any idea how much time this is saving on a weekly basis?
Yep. On a weekly basis, it is saving this customer 8 hours a week. And again, to that point, not only is it saving them time, but it's making sure that it is accurate. It's making sure that there are no users that are missed. If that person's out sick, if they're on a holiday, whatever it is something that is still running every single day at noon. And that's the key takeaway and benefit with automation.
So it's not always just how much time can we, because there's a component to this that you look at, they're saving 8 hours a week. You can look at what does that person normally make per hour, and you can get a dollar amount associated to that. But it goes beyond that in terms of the accuracy and the documentation perspective, that anything that's being handled manually is subject to mistakes and time constraints and things getting missed. And so having something that is not subject to mistakes and, isn't going to get missed, there's an added benefit. And sometimes that's the key driver. It may not necessarily be just the time savings. It may be the accuracy component and the consistency.
Absolutely.
Got it. So how long did it take to develop this? And, in terms of cost, was there an immediate ROI, or is this something that's going to, show up over years? What does that look like from a financial perspective?
Yep. So in terms of the build out for this specific automation, it took us about 8 hours for this customer. Now, in terms of the initial ROI, it is something that that organization saw because one, they were able to immediately achieve CMMC compliance. It has freed up the primary point of contact or owner of this organization from having to go through and perform this tedious work in making sure there's no employees that need to be separated. And overall, it is providing them with that documentation, but not missing anything that may have been from a manual perspective or manual process.
That's perfect. So I know a lot of times business leaders are fearful to really explore putting AI or automation into use because they're worried about how much is it going to cost and is there an ROI? And it all comes down to an individual use case. One of the things we always try to look for is what is the initial automation, but then what could be layered on top of this? So that's something that I assume we can probably continue to build on. Now that we've got API access and we've got some automations running, we can extend what we're doing with that, add more automations and connect more data. So it comes down to, let's get the first use case that provides that ROI, and then you can just continue to build upon it.
Exactly. And if I may, a good example of that would be now that this organization has an automation in place that's disabling users at 90 days. If they're wanting to, then we could layer on top of that and we can add in that same automation logic to disable computers that are stale at 90 days. We can just need to have a process in place so it can be automated.
And that's interesting that you bring that up. We know we can disable users. I would assume that the opposite of that might be true, where you could actually create users as new employees start. So you basically are limitless in terms of creativity with this, but getting that first automation in place and the platform there is kind of the driver for it.
Exactly. And what we see a lot of time is once an organization does come around and begin to automate, it opens up a lot more for things that they want to automate because now they see what is possible and the time savings around those processes that are automated.
Awesome. Well, Hunter, I appreciate the information that you shared with us today. We're going to continue to bring use cases similar to this to the folks that are listening. I think we've got a couple of others that will be extending not just API automations that we discussed today. We'll be talking about some more traditional RPA, robotic process automations, as well as some AI-powered chatbot automations that we've brought to the mix. But again, thanks for reviewing this with us, and I look forward to talking with you on the next one as well.
Thank you, Shane.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to AI and Automation in Action. If today's conversation sparked ideas about how AI or automation could improve your operations, we'd love to continue that discussion with you. Join us next time as we showcase another real-world implementation and break down how to deploy AI responsibly and effectively. And if you want to brainstorm with our team, email us anytime at ideas@innovativeautomations.ai. Until next time.